I thought I was just doing my job, nursing a routine post-op patient at St. Augustine's Hospital, until I discovered the first body. It was 3 a.m. when I noticed the monitor's flatline, yet Dr. Caldwell insisted it was a false alarm. Moments later, the patient coded again. And again. Each time he brushed it off as complication risk, but my gut screamed cover-up. Over the next 48 hours, I found chart entries erased, consent forms missing, whispers of a secret procedure performed without family approval. And behind it all, the hospital's star surgeon, Dr. Marcus Caldwell, hailed as a miracle worker, but hiding a dark pattern. Dozens of silent victims, buried in the morgue with no explanation. In this series, you'll watch me piece together shredded medical records, hack an internal file server for hidden CT scans, and confront a man whose reputation could destroy mine. You'll see every clandestine step, the late-night hospital corridor stakeouts, the whispered phone calls to investigative lawyers, and the final expose that shattered a medical empire. So, take a deep breath, settle in, and imagine the LED lights of an empty ward, the beeping absence of a heart monitor, and the horrifying realization that the person sworn to save lives was the one taking them. This is where our story begins. My name is Emily Carter, and I've been an operating room nurse at St. Augustine's Hospital for 8 years. I'm 34, with a degree in critical care nursing and a knack for noticing the smallest anomalies: a drop in oxygen saturation, a stray comma in a chart, a surgeon's hesitation before an incision. Every morning, I suit up in scrubs and step into a controlled chaos of sterile lights, stainless steel, and life-saving urgency. I've worked shoulder to shoulder with dozens of surgeons, but none commanded more respect or inspired more trust than Dr. Marcus Caldwell. He's the hospital's golden boy, 40 years old, board-certified in multiple specialties, published in every top medical journal. He speaks softly with a steady confidence, and his hands move like they're guided by instinct rather than instruction. I first met Dr. Caldwell as a fresh graduate. He led my orientation, guiding me through my first laparoscopic case. I watched him navigate fragile tissues and bleeding vessels with calm precision. Every move deliberate, every decision measured. After that, I volunteered for his cases, eager to learn. Outside the OR, he was gracious, offering career advice, praising my vigilance, even sharing lunch in the staff lounge when he had time. He talked about his young daughter, his belief that medicine is about truth, and I believed him. If a complication ever arose, I knew I could trust his judgment. But lately, whispers had started. A patient whose file mysteriously vanished after a bad outcome, a family left with no explanation, a hush-hush review process that never resulted in answers. Colleagues whispered about fast-track surgeries, no consent, no second opinions. The word malpractice hung in the air like a bad smell. I chalked it up to rumor until I saw those flatlines. Now, everything I thought I knew about life-saving had turned upside down. Dr. Caldwell's reputation, built on saving lives, might be hiding something far darker, and I'm the one who has to find out. In the next chapter, we'll walk the corridors at 3 a.m., retracing my steps from the first false alarm to the shredded consent forms. You'll see the hospital's polished facade crack and realize how thin the line is between healer and harm. 2 nights after that initial flatline, I was on the midnight shift, walking the East Wing corridor in my practiced rhythm. The walls were lined with framed medical art, an attempt at calm, but tonight it felt eerie. I passed room 312 when I noticed the door ajar. Inside, Dr. Caldwell and a resident stood over the bed. The patient's chart lay on the desk, pages fluttering, some blank spots where vitals should have been. I paused. Who erased those entries? As I stepped closer, Caldwell looked up, flashing that reassuring smile. Just checking a discrepancy. he murmured, brushing past me. But his badge name gleamed under the fluorescent lights. M. Caldwell, M.D. His finger hovered over the missing consent form on the clipboard. Something about his steady calm felt off. Later, at the nurse's station, I pulled the digital chart and saw it. A block of white space where complications should have been recorded. The timestamp showed it removed 2 hours ago, just after Dr. Caldwell left. I felt a knot in my stomach. On my way to the supply closet, I overheard 2 orderlies whispering by the linen cart. "Did you hear? He fast-tracked that gallbladder patient. No family sign-off, no pre-op consult. Just went ahead." Their voices trembled. Back in the break room, I opened the anesthesiologist's manual left on a table. A sticky note read, "Signed off without review, MC." My pen hovered above it. MC. Marcus Caldwell. That same night, I discovered a shredded consent form in the paper recycle bin, its edges still bearing parts of a patient's signature. I pocketed the fragments and slipped out into the hall. The fluorescent lights flickered, and I realized these weren't isolated incidents. They were symptoms of a deeper cover-up. In the next chapter, we'll follow me diving into the hospital's shadow network, hacking hidden folders, tracing deleted files, and gathering the first unshakable proof that Dr. Caldwell's miracles had a deadly price. That night, I returned to the EHR workstation under the guise of chart reviews. My heart pounded as I navigated to Dr. Caldwell's archive folder and saw dozens of patient records marked as deleted. My pulse quickened. I knew these files held the proof I needed. Next, I examined the audit logs, scanning the timestamps for any sign of a manual deletion. Sure enough, the log showed a precise minute when chart number 312 vanished, right after Dr. Caldwell's badge swipe in the operating wing. It was uncanny how the timing matched the critical complication he'd brushed off. Determined, I accessed the hospital's secure backup server. I pulled last week's full data snapshot and restored the missing records. Signed consent forms, complication reports, and pre-op notes detailing an unexpected hemorrhage. I held the printed consent in my hand, heart racing. This was the irrefutable proof that family had never approved the procedure. Finally, I cross-referenced patient metadata to build a minute-by-minute timeline. The admission, the surgery start, the critical event, and the immediate cover-up. Each detail fell into place, revealing a pattern of deliberate deletions and silence. With these restored charts, audit timestamps, and backup files, I now possessed an unbreakable digital trail. Dr. Caldwell's reputation for miracle surgeries was on the brink of collapse, and I had the evidence to bring it down. By the end of that third night, I realized accusation alone wouldn't stop Caldwell. So I built my own fortress. First, I secured the evidence. I copied every recovered EHR file, log entry, and chart PDF onto an encrypted USB drive, and stashed a second identical copy in my locker at home. I never left it in one place. Next, I locked down my own digital footprint. I changed every password to long passphrases, enabled 2-factor authentication on my workstation, email, and the hospital's intranet. If anyone tried to access my files, I'd get an instant alert. Then, I reached out to an investigative lawyer I'd contacted discreetly before. At midnight, we met over coffee in a deserted staff lounge. I laid out the audit logs, the shredded consent fragments I'd taped together, and the backup charts. She nodded gravely and agreed to draft a formal complaint for the state medical board. I also began anonymous tip lines, one to the hospital compliance office, another to a local health reporter. Each message included a snippet of evidence, just enough to spark an inquiry, but not enough to blow my cover. Finally, I tightened the ward's physical security. I placed a concealed camera above the supply cabinet door, recording anyone who attempted to remove or tamper with patient files. I even swapped the corroded lock on the chart room door with a smart lock that logged each access. With each layer of protection, I transformed from vulnerable nurse into empowered whistleblower. Caldwell could delete files, shred forms, and manipulate charts. But he couldn't erase the chain of custody I'd built. In the next chapter, we'll see how I used these countermeasures to plan the ultimate confrontation, where silence gave way to revelation, and the true pattern of malpractice was laid bare for the world to see. The night before I planned to go public, I laced up my nursing shoes and slipped into the empty operating wing. My evidence, restored charts, audit logs, consent forms, was neatly arranged in a folder under my arm. Every step echoed in the silent hallway. I found Dr. Caldwell's office unlocked. Inside, the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminated his awards and family photos. On a hunch, I hit record on my phone's voice memo before knocking. "Dr. Caldwell?" I called softly. He looked up, surprised, but maintained that calm veneer. "I need to talk to you about chart number 312. His smile faltered. "Isn't that patient long gone?" he replied, voice steady, but eyes narrowing. I sat across from him and slid the folder onto his desk. "You deleted their records. You removed their consent forms. You covered up a fatal error." I watched the color drain from his face. He leaned back. "You have no right to access those files." I tapped the first printed consent form. I have every right, as a nurse, as a witness, and as a whistleblower. I placed the restored chart pages, the audit timestamps, and the original signed paperwork in front of him, one by one. "This timeline shows you unlinked the file just minutes after that hemorrhage. You called it a complication. No second opinion, no family notification." His jaw clenched. He opened his mouth to protest, but I held up a hand. "Listen to this." I played my hidden recording, his own voice dismissing concerns as routine hiccups and brushing aside a resident's question about missing consent. His tone was unmistakably smug. Caldwell slammed the folder shut. "You're risking your license for a misunderstanding." I stood, voice low but firm. "It's not a misunderstanding when lives are at stake. I have copies going to the state medical board, to the hospital CEO, and to a national health reporter at 6 this morning. You can either come clean now or watch your career end in headlines." Silence stretched. Then he exhaled and said, "You win. I'll cooperate." His shoulders slumped, pride replaced by resignation. I collected my phones, backed up my recordings, and left without another word. In that moment, the power shifted. The man once untouchable was exposed, and I had orchestrated it all with patience, proof, and precision. In the next chapter, we'll see how the hospital responded, how Dr. Caldwell's practice was suspended, and how justice, though slow, finally found its way. But remember, confrontation wins nothing without the courage to present undeniable evidence. By dawn, my evidence packets were in the hands of the state medical board and our hospital CEO. I watched the email confirmations pop up on my phone. Complaint received. Investigation opened. Case escalated to compliance. Within hours, Dr. Caldwell's operating privileges were suspended. An official notice replaced his name on the OR schedule. Pending review by medical board. Nurses whispered in the hallways, some in relief, others in shock. The man they called a savior was now a suspect. At the morning huddle, the chief nursing officer addressed the staff. "Effective immediately, we will undergo a full audit of patient charts from the last 6 months. Please cooperate with compliance officers. Our priority is transparency and patient safety." As investigators combed through records, I reviewed every file I'd collected. My heart ached for the families whose loved ones never got honest answers. One by one, I reached out, offering my support, sharing what I'd uncovered, and inviting them to speak with legal counsel. Their gratitude, though tinged with anger, reminded me why I'd risked everything. The next day, a health reporter published an expose. Hospital horror, star surgeon's secret cover-up. It ran on the local news website and was picked up by national outlets. Dr. Caldwell's credentials were under the headline, followed by bullet points of deleted charts, missing consents, and whistleblower testimony. In staff break rooms, the mood shifted from denial to determination. We formed a peer support group for nurses who'd witnessed irregularities. We held tearful debriefings and shared strategies for speaking up safely. Our hospital's culture, once steeped in hierarchy and silence, began to change. Meanwhile, legal action moved forward. The state board scheduled Caldwell's hearing. The families filed civil suits for emotional distress and wrongful death. I sat in on the initial compliance meeting, watching him enter the room with his head down. No longer the confident maestro, but a man confronted by his own deeds. For me, the victory wasn't about revenge. It was about restoring integrity to patient care. I returned to my nursing duties with renewed purpose, knowing that one person's courage could topple even the most entrenched power. In the next chapter, we'll explore the personal toll, how healing began for the families, how I coped with the aftermath, and how our hospital rebuilt its trust. Remember, exposing the truth is only step one. Real change requires collective action and accountability. In the weeks following the expose, something remarkable happened. Our hospital became a place of collective healing instead of hushed fear. Support circles. We formed small groups, nurses, techs, even some physicians, who met twice a week in the staff lounge. We shared our experiences, our frustrations, and our fears. It wasn't therapy, but in those raw, honest conversations, we found solidarity. Family outreach. I reached out personally to several patient families. We held Zoom sessions to answer questions, offered copies of the recovered records, and connected them with legal resources. Their gratitude, often through tears, reminded me why I refused to stay silent. Policy reforms. The hospital board enacted new protocols, mandatory chart audits every quarter, randomly selected, dual signature consents for high-risk procedures, anonymous reporting hotline monitored by an external ethics committee. Each change was a direct response to the loopholes Caldwell exploited. Personal growth. For me, the ordeal reshaped my identity as a nurse. I enrolled in a whistleblower protection workshop, strengthening my understanding of legal safeguards. I began mentoring new staff on spotting red flags and advocating for patients. Public speaking. I was invited to share my story at a regional nursing conference. Standing at the podium, under bright lights, I spoke about courage, accountability, and the power of collaboration. Applause didn't feel like praise for me, but for every healthcare worker who'd ever stayed silent. Creative outlet. On evenings off, I started journaling each shift's challenges and breakthroughs. Those pages filled with sketches of hospital corridors and notes on policy ideas. It became my compass, reminding me that change starts with one determined voice. Today, St. Augustine's is not the same. The corridors hum with cautious optimism and Dr. Caldwell is a cautionary tale in our orientation program. But, more importantly, we learned that integrity isn't a luxury. It's the foundation of every life we touch. In Part 9, we'll look at the broader impact: regulatory changes statewide, national media dialogues on medical transparency, and how one nurse's stand sparked a movement. Remember, true healing combines justice with community, and personal growth thrives on shared purpose. What began in one hospital corridor rippled across the state, and then the nation. Statewide audits. Prompted by our case, the state medical board launched audits in 10 other hospitals. Reports revealed similar fast-track surgeries and missing consents, triggering dozens of investigations. Regulatory changes. legislators introduced the Patient Transparency Act, mandating dual signature consents and unalterable electronic health records. The bill passed unanimously, citing St. Augustine's whistleblower as its catalyst. National dialogue. Media outlets picked up the story. Profiles in Health magazine called it a nurse's stand that saved lives. Morning news segments featured interviews with patient advocates, and medical journals published editorials on the ethics of surgical reporting. Industry conferences. I joined panels at the National Patient Safety Symposium, sharing data on chart manipulation and advocating for nationwide integrity protocols. Hospitals from New York to California reached out to adopt our policies. Educational curricula. Nursing schools updated their ethics training to include modules on digital record security and whistleblower rights, using my story as a case study. Next-generation nurses learned not just to care for patients' bodies, but to protect their rights. Legal precedents. Civil suits filed by families. Set precedents in malpractice law, holding institutions, not just individuals, accountable for systemic cover-ups. Judges cited our evidence trail as an exemplar of digital forensics in healthcare. Across the country, my name became shorthand for quiet courage. But it wasn't about me. It was about every healthcare worker who noticed something off and chose to act. In Part 10, we'll conclude with final reflections. How this journey reshaped my life, what I've learned about speaking truth to power, and how you, no matter your field, can turn evidence into impact. Remember, change begins with one voice ready to be heard. We've traveled from a silent hospital hallway to state capitals and national conferences. Proof that a single whistleblower can spark systemic reform. What I learned: courage needs a plan. Gut instinct must be backed by evidence and strategy. Community empowers. Healing and reform come through collective action, not isolation. Integrity is non-negotiable. Patient safety and trust depend on transparency. Your turn. Document suspicion. Note every anomaly. Shredded file, missing signature, silent alarm. Build your evidence trail. Secure copies, timestamps, and witness statements. Seek allies. Connect with legal advisors, compliance officers, or trusted peers. Speak up. Use anonymous hotlines, internal reports, or media channels, whatever it takes. Wherever you work, remember, silence protects the powerful. Speaking out protects the vulnerable. Integrity is not just a virtue. It's the very foundation of trust in any profession. Thank you for following this journey. If it moved you, share your own story in the comments. Subscribe for more real-life stories of courage, conviction, and change. And please, don't let your voice go unheard.